I guess I found the sweet spot for Google Glass. There's no embarrassment in wearing these things when you're out, pretty much totally alone with your thoughts and your dog and your playful, loving snow dog. You're a good dog, Cecil. Everybody loves you. But I can't let him off leash. Heaven forbid in New York City. And yeah, so the sweet spot for Google Glass, alone with thoughts, letting your mind wander, capturing those thoughts. Oh, yes, and inflicting you with yet another video. It's probably going to be 3 tonight. I feel like this will be the 3rd video if I decide to push this up. And it's fun. Why not use YouTube as an idea capture? And what ideas am I capturing this time? Well, it occurs to me constantly that invention and doing things for the first time is often a matter of being around as technology mostly moves things from the realm of not quite yet possible to just barely doable and then easily doable. And sometimes things move from one to the next, and people hardly even notice it. And that's the case with like when Flash, when the Flash player put out, I guess it was Macromedia back in those days, before Adobe acquired it. But it was still included with all the web browsers, and they added video support. And it was Adobe or Macromedia who did this thing, but there's a company bought for, I forget, like $1 or $2 billion back before billion-dollar acquisitions were like a everyday occurrence. It was one of the first ones, and that was of a certain company called YouTube, that realizing that the built into all browser Flash player supporting video changed everything, because before that it was really a pain to play video in a browser. You needed very platform dependent components on your browser. You had to be on Windows with ActiveX installed, and the server sending the video had to be similarly proprietarily configured. And rarely did everything line up just so that you could get video, and certainly nothing better than barely watchable postage stamp sized stuff. And then along came the Flash plugin just one day. Oh, we now support video, and a $2 billion or $1 or $2 billion, I forget what, but it was born overnight because YouTube realized that streaming video that people uploaded was a killer app, and it just passed from the realm of impossible to barely achievable to easy. And they were the first to move on it, and they had a usable implementation. There's a whole nother story there about usable implementations. Tons of people are first all the time, but so many of them get the tiny little nuanced details wrong that make them never, I guess it was Jeffrey Moore's word, go inside the tornado or into the tornado, like Netscape did. But then, poof, it piddled out because Internet Explorer came along. But they are starting to piddle out again because Chrome came along. So sometimes you get the small little details right, and suddenly you've got a billion-dollar enterprise like YouTube did. Instagram did that. Angry Birds did that, even though they had a physics engine that they had been working for many, many years on, and it wasn't quite as light of a touch as Instagram. But these billion-dollar companies pop into existence, and they're the ones who get picked up by that amazing process of becoming worth $1 billion, because they got the tiny little implementation details right. And if you were to look at me, and who am I? I'm talking like I have all this authority and stuff, but do I really? Well, I've done so many things first. but I got the implementation details wrong. And I'm humble enough to admit that I am not Twitter, I am not WordPress, I'm not Salesforce, but I could have been any one of these things or a number more based on the creations, my inventions, working for Scala Multimedia back in the day, Profit 21, and a whole bunch of companies where I did things for the first time. My biggest mistake was not doing it for myself, or at least doing it in the free and open source world where tons of eyeballs could also partake in it. And I did it for employers. The employers had a completely different set of priorities and objectives than I did, so it was isn't it interesting thing that was there. You know, in its own way, Hittail was that way. I did it for Connors Communications. I could have carried that along to be some marketing juggernaut with a proper tender love and care. And again, with 360i Tiger, could have turned that into something fabulous. But when you don't own these things and you do them for employers, you just don't have the same heart in it, and you yourself don't have the same set of priorities. Knowing that you'll never own it, you don't do those, over-the-top things that it would take to make it scalable, to make it easily marketed, to make it have its own inherent viral self-marketing quality. And so I could ramble forever. It's close to 7 minutes. I think the point is that things pass from the realm of the impossible to the just barely possible to the now this is easy. And I apologize here if I'm showing you anything I shouldn't, but the dog did stop. There is nothing. Sometimes it's false alerts. Sorry, I should spare you those details, but guess what? I don't edit, and that's part of my secret here. And am I successful at this approach? Well, I am almost at 5,000 YouTube subscribers, and I'll be at the YouTube video production facilities, and when I am, I will put higher production value into these things if I can on my Fridays. So that's your incentive. Thumbs up my videos, share them, and hopefully I'll make them better. And I'm trying to avoid turning ads on for your sake and for the sake of just going after the notoriety and the publicity rather than the money, because I do have a paycheck, so I don't need that money so desperately. So I'm keeping it commercial free as long as possible, and while I keep rambling, I'll just try and hit this home before it reaches too long. I'm connecting dots. I see things entering the realm of the possible that were not before. They have a lot to do with people getting technical who never thought they could with Python, getting exposure to old school text-only servers, like people never thought they could with Linux, and monitoring your own advancement and progress becoming popular through social media and SEO with Pipulate, and to have an app to tear apart and to host on your server and to learn Python with, and to connect the circle back upon itself and make it all self-referential and one awesome upward spiral of easy formulaic pathway to becoming technical without becoming slave to any particular software vendors, or at least the very fewest and the very least evil, which is Linux and Python. That is probably the smallest thing, if I boiled it down to what I was trying to teach, Linux, Python, and you can't get away from Git because you got to keep your code safe and shareable and stuff, and Vim, which is another thinking, living experience that you can have, and has the deepest barrier to entry, but in the end might be the most fulfilling of all of these things. So anyway, that's me and my dog and my walk in this hopefully over weather of March in New York City. Thanks for joining me. Talk to you soon, and don't forget to jump on the bandwagon